Welcome into another week. It's a Monday, but it's a warmer Monday than normal this time of year in Pittsburgh, so hard to complain. I'm Mike Asti, and this is an episode of Mic Drop Here, made possible by the Believe Network, available everywhere you get your podcasts, and that includes being played on Sirius XM through Believe. We are going to talk Pittsburgh Steelers and the Steelers in the rumor mill this offseason. Nothing new there. Nothing new on trying to get off the snide and the pressure of Rooney II saying he's sick of early playoff exits, and yet that seems to be the destination for the Steelers. Death taxes, and every year, and this one feels like another one where they are destined to contend, to crawl in to 9-10 wins, but not really have a chance to do much more and not win a playoff game and continue that streak for Mike Tomlin and the franchise, and the angst of fans, of course, revving up as well. And part of that, of course, is they have not had a dynamic quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger. Since really before the end, even of Ben Roethlisberger. Of course, towards the end, he was a shell of his former self, and then it's been a myriad of really backups and failed draft situations. Bust that was Kenny Pickett. Yes, he won as a backup champion with the Eagles, but didn't really play there, and the Steelers situation did not work out. And obviously, Mason Rudolph, Doc Hodges, Mitch Trubisky, the whole carousel didn't really work. And then last year, trying to recoup things last season with Justin Fields, another former first-round pick, and Russell Wilson, a veteran, didn't really work. Didn't change the course either. Someone okay, Justin Fields, you give it to him. He's young still, former first-round guy. Maybe wouldn't break the bank. Okay, you bring him back. You're not going to have both. Rooney's kind of made that clear. Russell Wilson was good at times, showing flashes at times, but it wasn't enough. He's likely going to be elsewhere. Maybe you got more out of him than what was Denver for sure, but not enough to do more. When you look at the division with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, etc., around the conference, around the league. And then there's the interesting current rumor of Matthew Stafford and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. And feel free to jump aboard. Feel free to comment along because I'm kind of torn on this topic, on the topic of Stafford to the Steelers and if the Steelers should trade for the future Hall of Famer. I'm torn there. I will admit that. Usually I like to give a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm a man of conviction, but I am torn here. And I'll tell you why, and you can comment along, or just let me rant here again. Mic drop with Believe, Sirius XM. And you can find me everywhere on social at Mike Asti 11 down there below in the graphic. Now, I think everyone would agree that Matthew Stafford, especially at this point in his career where he's still playing at a high level, where he did take the Rams into the postseason, where he did win 10 games, and where he did really compete with the eventual champion Philadelphia Eagles and had 324 yards in that game. So he's coming off of one of his best games of this past season. He's not 40, he's not 41 like, say, Aaron Rodgers, who maybe could even be his replacement in LA if this would go down. And of course, there's some that want him in Pittsburgh, and there were rumors even a year ago or 2 years ago, of course, of Aaron to the Steelers, but that didn't happen, and I don't think that should happen. But Matthew Stafford's a different animal. This is a guy still playing at a high level, at a top level. He's still a top 10 quarterback. He would be the best under center at the way he's currently playing, and really even in general, since the end of Ben. He's destined for the Hall of Fame. He's going to get there. He has won a Super Bowl. It's in recent memory. It's not, a decade plus ago like Russell Wilson's. And again, he's still playing at a high level. I get all of that. But where are the Steelers? Does it make sense? This is a trade. This is not signing him. This is not what Aaron Rodgers would be, that maybe you catch him just wanting to hang on and try something and you don't have to pay him all that much. This isn't like getting Aaron Rodgers in his prime where he's winning MVPs, but now you could pay him a lot less. I don't like the move of Rodgers, but again, you at least would be paying him likely a lot less money. It'd be a bridge thing for a year or so, and you try out again in a much deeper quarterback class because you're never going to have a top 5 pick if you're never going to be awful. That's that conversation. I don't like the Rodgers thing, but that's a low risk thing like Russell Wilson was, like even Fields was for a 6th round pick. You're not going to be breaking the bank. The reason why I'm torn here on Stafford, even though I think Stafford would be a much better player, with the Steelers than Aaron Rodgers right now, and that Stafford would be the best quarterback at his current level, the way he's currently playing, than they've had since Ben Roethlisberger, is because what I just said, this is not going to be just a quick 1 year sign, vet min, whatever, maybe a little bit more if it's Rodgers, vet min if it's Kirk Cousins. It's not going to be that. You'd have to trade for him. You'd have to be giving up a high-end pick for him, maybe even more, maybe multiple draft picks, maybe not a first because of his age, but maybe it is a first. But if it's not a first, you're looking at multiple picks. It might be 2026, it might be 2027 draft picks. This might be beyond just this season in terms of capital that you're giving up. And how close are you? What does it really do? That is the conversation. I don't think anyone would deny, of course, that Matthew Stafford would be an upgrade from what Russell Wilson was, from what Justin Fields is even at this point in his career, and maybe you still could bring Fields back, and I don't think he'd want to learn and do that thing again, but that would be ideal. So you'd be giving up on a young former first-round pick that maybe you think something of in Fields. He did go 4-2 and under center for a vet, a short-term thing. At most, you're looking at, 2 years of Stafford, even if they're high-level years. At 40, you're not going to want anybody around. And how good is the team? What are you giving up? What is your future like? That's the conversation around Stafford to the Steelers, and that's why I'm completely torn here. On one hand, I love Matthew Stafford. I think he's a Hall of Famer. The Detroit years, the yards were there, the numbers were there. They weren't a contender. That wasn't his fault. They did make the playoffs a couple times. His numbers are out of this world, even from those days. And he's never going to be that 4,000-yard passer again, probably. But he was 3,700 plus last year. He doesn't make mistakes. The interception total was only 8. It was low last year. I think it was only 11 the year before, so that's over double digits, but it wasn't that high in comparison to QBs these days. He doesn't make killer mistakes. He can help you with big plays. Maybe you keep George Pickens in that scenario, although obviously that's a whole conversation for another day about if he's going to be dealt, and many who cover the Steelers every day say he certainly could be, and you never know with drama when it comes to the Steelers. He could elevate a Pat Freiermuth as a security blanket. He could elevate other players. He could help you if you're trying to have stopgacks. He might work out with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith might love working with him, and Smith is going nowhere, of course, as OC. He would be that veteran that could elevate. And you wouldn't be bad. You're not going to be a 2-win team. You're probably going to be a 10-win team again and go right in the postseason. And then he would at least give you this season of play, this 2025 season of play coming up, where he would be much more on level with the Joe Burrows, a Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, whoever you play in the playoffs. They're younger. They might be ranked ahead of him in any of your top 10, but you'd rather have a guy at the bottom of that top 10 with a year or so left of being elite than somebody who's barely a top 20 quarterback at best, or you're trying to figure something out and is inexperienced. That's been kind of the case, or career backup the last 4+ years. So he would be an upgrade, but are you a contender? And what are you giving up? That's the situation. If you're not a contender and it doesn't bring you more than a wild card playoff loss, but you are giving up a first-round pick, you are giving up multiple draft picks, you are giving up a lot of your future when you need a lot. The Steelers need help in the secondary. The Steelers still need help all over the defense. The Steelers, if they do trade Pickens, are going to need more wide receiver help there as a deep threat, but need more help even if they don't trade Pickens. They don't have enough there, of course. Calvin Austin III is good. He's not great. He's not good enough to be your number 2. There's not enough wide receiver depth there. The Steelers' wide receiver room, with Pickens even being inconsistent and a little bit of a malcontent towards the end, it's been a problem. It's not been enough. And until it is enough, it maybe doesn't matter who's under center. Okay? I don't think they've had the answer there. I don't think anyone thinks they've had the answer there, even if you say want to continue on with Fields and want to try that again because he's younger and maybe give him the keys in a stopgap year and see what happens. If it doesn't work, great. If it does, or if it doesn't work, you try again in the draft. If it does, great. He's still young. But even that opinion, nobody else would be somebody that you'd want to have around who's been there the last several years. But even that opinion for 2025, I think everyone agrees Stafford is an upgrade, but there's not enough there to do it with Fields, Stafford, or whoever. I had Nick Faribaugh, Penn Live, longtime colleague and friend, on a recent episode of this show, and he point blank said it. No matter what the Steelers do 2025 is not a season in which they're really a championship contender. And I don't think it's a hot take. I mean, Nick's very, very popular among the fans, but he dropped a hot take there. I don't think it's really a hot take. It might be an unpopular take, but that's just keeping it real. You got to appreciate that. And that's really, really the truth. So if that is the case, then are you worse off in the future by doing this now? Do you go from 9-10 wins to 12-13, contend for the division, and contend to win a playoff game finally for the first time since 2016? Does that happen? If that happens, you do it. Even if you don't win a championship, you got to get off this not winning a playoff game snide. You got to go back to what the Steelers were. You got to try to make this team better and go on a run, because once you win one playoff game, then who knows? You could all of a sudden be in the Super Bowl. It's not like everyone's penciled in every year, and the Chiefs have lost now, and going back 4 in a row seems really, really impossible, even though if anyone could do it, they could. So just in the conference alone, it could be open again. If you think you can get in the mix there, then sure. But if not, and this is the reality, this is what Nick said to me on this show, and this is the reality, what are you doing? So I'm torn, and I've been writing about it. It's out there. Just search my name and Yard Barker and other spots. I've been talking about it, been tweeting about it. Everyone has, nationally and locally. But the issue again is, what are you giving up? Now, if they can get him for next to nothing, if they can fleece the Rams and, somehow the contract's going to still be fine, because obviously the cap hit with LA is why this is even a conversation. He's not getting paid tons of money, 27.5, I believe, for 2025, around what it'll work to, but his cap hit's almost 50. That's the issue. That's the contract problem. I'll get to in a moment why I think they're still making a mistake, and I did write about that. But if that works for you, then fine. But you're giving up a lot for Matthew Stafford, and what are you getting out of it as a team? That's the question. It's nothing against Matthew Stafford. He would be the best option, whether it be Fields, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins. Stafford would be the best option under center for 2025, 100% for any of those teams, but certainly the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need so much more. Again, they're likely also replacing running back with Najee Harris no longer being around. So you're going to need another running back, even if you like Jaylen Warren. You're going to need more help there, more receiver all over the defense. Obviously, this quarterback situation that would not help you in the future and be your franchise guy. That would be a short-term thing. There's a lot the Steelers need. Even Cam Hayward eventually is going to be that fine wine and go to retire. It's already been in rumors, so he's not going to play forever. You're going to need help there in the D-line, offensive line. Zach Frazier, the VU guy that I covered, he's your guy of the future at center, but you still need more around him on that offensive line for the future. It's better than it was 4 years ago, of course, but you still need more. A lot of things the Steelers need, and they can do in the draft, and I also talked about that on the recent episode with Nick, as he made that clear. Like, there's so many needs, there's so much to do. It can be a fun draft for Omar Khan and company, because you need to do so much. It's really best available. Granted, some needs obviously are higher than others, but how much of that are you willing to give up? And what do you get out of bringing in Matthew Stafford? What are you giving up to get Matthew Stafford? What does the deal look like? What will the money look like? What will it do for the future of your franchise? Does it take you from the 9-win insanity that has been the last 5+ years? If not, do you do it? Do you do it? Again, mic drop here with Believe, SiriusXM, and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Now, the other end of this is outside of the Steelers conversation, because I admit I'm torn. I'm leaning towards you just don't do it. I do agree with Nick. No matter what happens this offseason, they're not going to win a championship this year. That does look to be the realistic perspective, and there's just too much to do. They need too much help. They're likely not going to be horrendous. They're going to be a 9-10 win team, winning season, and lose right away again. The landscape is not changing enormously enough around them to make those teams worse and to make them better, at least for 2025, no matter what they do in the draft. And even if they bring in a receiver, a Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, for name another Ram, but that seems like, less likely. These are players that 2-3 years ago, great, but right now they're less than they were. They're not going to elevate you by themselves, especially with not knowing who's under center. There's other options, of course. They're in the mix for everything under the sun, receiver-wise, and all the rumors, and some are BS and some are real, and you kind of got to get through the BS, to say the least. But the Trevor Lawrence thing, there's BS, by the way. That's not happening. That's giving up a lot. Granted, that's a younger player, so if you're going to give up a lot, then maybe that would make more sense for your future, whereas Stafford's only a 1 or 2 year thing. But either way, you need so much. You need so much. What does it do for the team right now? Because while the Steelers want to build for the future around a guy, finally, they also can't just be, all of a sudden be good in 2-3 years. So again, I'm leaning towards you need too much. You don't do this. You need too much. You don't do it. It won't be a game changer for you. You bring back Russell. You bring back Justin Fields, not Wilson. I'd rather have Wilson than Aaron Rodgers, by the way, if I got to pick there. But you bring back Justin Fields, and then if it's great, it's great. He's still very, very young. If it's not, then you move on. Now, if he wants to break the bank, you don't do it. But 4-2, he only played minimally. It's not like he's going to be somebody that'll command an incredible, enormous salary, even with his age and his value. Was just, again, traded for a 6th-round pick and given up on by a franchise that drafted him as a first-round QB. So I think he's still affordable. He's still within reason. He's likely going to give you those 9-10 wins anyway. The team needs so much around him. It'll allow you to figure out whether he's your future or not. That's where I lean. But if you just want to hurry up and see whatever you got and finally go all in and maybe get to the modern NFL, there are some fans that like that you finally play fantasy football almost, because the Steelers never really do that, and just finally feel like you're going all in on 1 year, the end of Cam Hayward, go in all 1 year. All the rumors, I've done shows. I do think Tomlin's tenure should come to an end, and it's been too long, and he's a Hall of Famer, but Andy Reid was fired. It can happen to him. But if you're facing that pressure because he's not going anywhere, to keep it real, then maybe you do something like this. Maybe you say, okay, 1st-round pick, bring in Stafford, go for it now in 2025. There's that opinion. I hear it. I don't think they should do it. But I want to put a pin in all of that for the Steelers talk right now and go over to why the Rams shouldn't do this and how this is crazy for the Rams in this conversation, and then probably wrap up this edition of the show. And anyone who still wants to get in here, whether it be on X or YouTube or anywhere on social, you can. Otherwise, you're going to keep hearing my ranting. But again, Mic Drop, available everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, with Believe, and also available on Sirius XM. This is a Steelers edition of the show, a Steelers off-season edition of the show, talking a lot of Stafford rumors to the Steelers, and if that makes sense, if they should or should not trade for Matthew Stafford, who, again, future Hall of Famer, has his ring. Definitely underpaid salary-wise. Granted, we get the cap hit situation with LA, and they went after them picks and got a ring, but now who knows? But that'll segue into what the hell are the Rams doing? What's going on in Los Angeles? What are they doing? A lot of crazy things go on in the brains of people in Los Angeles, and that appears to be the case now. I get the 49 plus of the cap hit. That's likely why we're here in my story where I said this was a mistake. I even brought that up. I'm not ignorant to it. That's the issue here. The contract overall for the Rams is not great. They also got to get his perspective. $27 million for Stafford's production, no matter what his age was, the amount of games they won, and the fact they were a division champion, got in the playoffs, and really contended with the Eagles, who won the Super Bowl, is a bargain basement deal. $27 million is more money than I have, than any of you have, than we're all going to ever have in our lives, likely. But it's just about market value. Okay, it's just about market value. In your life, if you're making 80 grand, but somebody that you think you're better than is making 100 grand, you're going to be a little better little bitter at that company. You're going to sit there. If you're both at the same company and you feel like your resume is better, you're better at the craft, you're still getting it done, and you're making 80 and they're making 100, and they haven't earned that money, you're going to be bitter and say, I want to get to that money at minimum. That's just an average full comparison here. That's just random numbers. So move that into $27 million for Matthew Stafford, who's going to the Hall of Fame and has already proven he can win a championship when he has a squad around him. Multiple-time Pro Bowler, all the numbers, 50K. It's all going to be there whenever he wraps it up, if not more so. And he's always been a quarterback too that didn't really make mistakes. He's never been this high-level interception guy, and he certainly hasn't been that in Los Angeles. He's certainly not that recently, so he's not going to kill you by himself either. 27 mil, Dak 60. What has Dak done? The numbers are there at times. What has he done in the playoffs? They're not always there in the playoffs. He's coming off an injury. I mean, the Cowboy situation is a complete ridiculousness, and that's a dumpster fire in and of itself, but that's the money he's getting. And it's not always at the highest level QB is the best guy. I get the market. I get who's ever up. I get you got to keep guys. I get you got to pay guys. I get whoever's up is going to get the most money, etc. But look at what Kirk Cousins just signed for, even though obviously that hasn't worked in Atlanta and he's going to be looking elsewhere. Look at the money. Look at what QBs are getting around the NFL and tell me that a lot of them deserve that money over Matthew Stafford. So put yourself into the shoes of Matthew Stafford. Los Angeles is not a poor franchise. This is not a moribund franchise. This is not, you're, poverty franchise, the Los Angeles Rams. There's money there, and you're dealing with the cap. This isn't Major League Baseball, and I get, again, the cap hit sucks, but he restructured a year ago. Maybe you go to him and say, hey, Matthew, we're trying to take you from a division title to another championship. A second ring really gets you into a peak level situation. It goes from locking up the Hall of Fame to kicking that door down and going into another group, and you can fully blame that first decade on the Lions. And here's the case after, and this is even after Aaron Donald. So this is a different thing. You don't have that star on defense. Cooper Kupp maybe we'll trade, but if you're still here, we can elevate, we can draft, we can do other things. Cooper Kupp, Super Bowl MVP, he's a great player himself, but that can be replaced. You can get receivers there. And I don't even think they should trade Cooper Kupp, but if that got to happen, you're done if you get rid of Matthew Stafford. But you can go to Stafford and say, let's restructure. He just did in July of 2024. He understands the cap hit. This guy's not an idiot. He wants to win. Him and his wife are saying things about, hey, we want to win, and what you're doing is not about winning. So maybe you go to him and say, let's restructure. But what you can do, this happens in sports, this happens in the NFL, even in the parameters. You can give him more money up front. You can make it a signing bonus thing. You can make it so he's getting more and feels more comfortable on his market value and getting more, and make it only a 3-year deal instead of a 5-year. And maybe he wants 5, and that's the problem here. I'll get to that in a moment too. But as long as it's not wild and he's not getting unreasonable, you make it a 2 or 3-year deal maybe. He's still playing well enough that if you get 1 or 2 more years out of that, again, what are your better options? But you try to restructure, and you do it in a way that the cap hit is reduced. You try to restructure in a way that helps the cap hit, that still respects him, that locks him up, that keeps him there, that makes him comfortable. That should be your conversation. Now, if you did all of that originally weeks and months ago when this was first getting in rumors, certainly weeks ago when it's been revved up here after the Super Bowl, then okay. And he said no, okay, but that's not been reported. That's not been reported. It definitely sounds like from his wife, Kelly Stafford, who's outspoken on her own pod, that this is something that surprised them. That was not the initial conversation. There were leaks and rumors and people nationally talking about this and reporting on this before they were really aware and had that meeting. And of course, Cooper Kupp was part of that too and might upset them, but even about themselves individually. And he's not in a better situation with the Giants. Yeah, Neighbors there, but they need so much help. They're not going to contend. As I just mentioned at the top of the show, say he's a Steeler. Are the Rams right now in a better spot than the Steelers would be in the AFC with him, or no? And I get the Rams defense is suspect at times, but it was good enough, and you just won a division. You just got in. You almost beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the postseason. You really contended with them. Better weather, maybe you would have beat them. You could argue you're in a better spot in the NFC, and the Steelers need a lot, despite also getting in. I get it. They both got in and then didn't go far. The Steelers need more to me. The Steelers are not in a better spot. There's too many elite QBs in the AFC comparison to where you rank in the NFC. So, and you just won with LA. Like, why move across the country for, at best, a lateral move? It'll be a worse move with New York, unless you just want to be in New York and be with that historic franchise for some reason. Talks of Minnesota. Yeah, they were just like you, got in. They didn't win division despite a hard division. And maybe you could step right in and do what Sam Darnold did there because of that offense. and maybe your connection there and familiarity there. I think Stafford will be good at other places. I do, but I would rather be with the Rams in LA and stay there and have warmer weather and be in a similar deal. And I do actually believe maybe a better team still, certainly a team that could easily win the West, whereas the Vikings are likely not going to beat Detroit or Green Bay again. So the issue is, even if you think team to team, roster to roster, the Vikings are in a tougher division looking up at better teams. You still maybe have the best QB, and you still maybe have the best team in your division. Seattle's still a question mark with Geno and how much longer that goes. Arizona's young, there's talent there, but when are they ever going to really put it together to truly contend? That's the question. Could be a similar year again for them. And the Niners are basically, at the end of the window at best. It's you for another couple years in that division. And once you're in, you don't know. That's not the case with Minnesota. So you're still in a better spot where you are if you're Matthew Stafford, but you also don't want to be disrespected money-wise. I totally get that. They got to give more based on his current level of play. But I think Stafford's better off staying with the Rams 100% for his legacy, for contending next season, for his quality of life, for every damn thing. And I think the Rams are better off with him. Yeah, Sam Darnold's much younger. I get that. I think the Vikings should actually do everything their brother can do to try to keep him. I mean, they Vikings should try to keep him. And I wrote about that too. But maybe that would be a thing because he's young. But I don't like the Aaron Rodgers move. I think the Rams might as well stay the course with Stafford too, at least for one more year. But instead, it looks like we're headed towards a bitter divorce the way they're handling this. And this is all leaks. You're not getting reports and rumors and all of that out there before conversation without some leaking going on here. And what I think could easily be happening, and this has been said, maybe they're trying to say, okay, Matthew, go test the waters. We'll let you and your agent talk. And once you get there, we're likely headed for that divorce. But you're not going to find much better because of your age, even though you're good still. I think he's going to find at least more than 27 mil. I don't think he's going to find 60, even though he's better than Dak. But I think he's going to find 40 plus. But if you want to win another championship with Sean McVay still around and you still can get in the division's wide open and the conference is still ripe for the taking, even though the Eagles could certainly do it again, outside of them, it's open. Everyone's been vulnerable and shown that. I would go for one more time. One more time. My daughter always tells me before I rock her to sleep because she sometimes gets fussy before I put her in the crib. I stand up and say, one more time. I'm going to do this with you one more time and then just put you in the crib because you'll eventually sleep there and you got to get some sleep. And she repeats and looks at me one more time. It's the cutest thing ever. That's what I would do. One more time. One more year with the Rams and Matthew Stafford. That's what I would do. I get the cap hit being bad. I get dealing with this next year and eventually chickens will come to roost. But he's restructured before. That's the best spot for him. You can win there. Why not do the restructuring? You got to give him a little bit more, but make the cap hit friendlier. Things can be done, even if it's in a bonus, to respect him because he deserves it based on what he's done there and what he's still doing at his level. And I don't think these other destinations that I talked about, should the Steelers do it or Giants or whoever, is a better spot for him. So I think the Rams are making a great mistake here. I think this is ridiculous by the Rams and borderline, messing it up when you don't have to unnecessarily. Maybe they don't like that they won because maybe this would be easier to do if they didn't just win. But if they're destined, should the Steelers get involved? That's kind of the question here. And I'm leaning towards no because the Steelers need so much from that perspective. But that would be the best quarterback they've had in 5+ years. So we will see. That'll make it intriguing. But if you're still destined for 10 wins, maybe both of these teams destined for the same situation. Although I think the Rams are better off in their division. Then you just don't know. That'll likely do it here for this edition of the show. Again, I admitted at the top, I'm a hot take guy. I'm a man of conviction. I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind and what I believe in. And when I'm strong in an opinion, I'm not afraid to give it. But I'm a little torn here where the Steelers should go after Matthew Stafford again, leaning no, because they need way too much. And I'm not torn in any way. I am strong on this, that the Rams are making a grave mistake, a ridiculous mistake. They're being stupid. This is too soon. You're breaking up a team that could win next year and saying, I don't think so, because of 3 years from now. I don't think so. We're just going to stop our chance to win. How does McVay like this? Does he want out eventually after this? Does everybody else want out after this? Yeah, you get some picks for Stafford and maybe Cup, but are you now rebuilding and you're 6 years out away from contending again? You're in LA. You're not the team they love. They wanted the Raiders back originally before the Vegas thing. You just start sucking, you're going to have trouble with attendance there. You already do. You got the ring, but it's open for one more year. It's open for one more year. So I would do it one more time. But you can find my full analysis there, written wise at Yarburger again, on why the Rams are making a grave mistake in trying to shut Matthew Stafford or flirting with it or letting him talk to teams or whatever. Really should give you why Stafford is in the best spot there too, even though I get him being upset and needing more money. And then if the Steelers should do this or not, or some other destinations and possibilities for Stafford, it's all over there. Again, Mic Drop is available everywhere you get your podcasts. It is powered by the Believe Network. A lot of national shows there, a lot of big names throughout Believe. You can find this and every episode of Mic Drop available everywhere you get your podcasts with Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. You can find a lot of my personal work regionally covering the West Virginia Mountaineers and that athletic program with WV Sports Now within the Pittsburgh Sports Now family of networks. You can find myself throughout social media at Mike Asti 11 and even the WVU related podcast there, Mountaineer Report, available everywhere you get your pods, and even How It's a Buzzsaw show with George Gerbo, who covers Maryland. We do the national scene there on the HBS, also available everywhere you get your podcasts and in your ears, maybe occasionally in video form here on my YouTube channel as well. So I will try to do more of these. I'm going to try to do more of these. Even right now, I got spring ball, though, covering WVU, so not every day. But when I can, I'm going to try to do more of these, pop to you more on X and bring them everywhere I can and talk about, I don't know, some conversations one way or the other. Again, torn on what the Steelers should do with Matthew Stafford, but leaning no because of the help. And then what the hell? What the hell, Rams? What the hell are you doing? You're screwing up a good thing. Just leave well enough alone. Leave it alone. Just ignore Kelly and continue on. I think it can be saved still and salvaged, but based on the rumors, based on the reports, based on what people in the know are saying, feels like they are destined to kind of blow up a contender and, then hope for the best for wherever Stafford lands.